When I mention the name Bob, many of you in this room are going to think about good old Zion Snyder. But unfortunately, this isn't a speech about him. This is a speech about my step-grandfather, Bob Hicks. Many years ago, during the early 1970s, my grandma was a single parent with two young kids named Paula and my father, Todd. While she was struggling to make ends meet and feed her family, she met Bob. And for some reason, he decided that he would step into their lives. This is always something I've admired about Bob. I mean, what single guy in their right mind would marry a woman who has two kids running around already? Fortunately for me, Bob was crazy enough to do just that. My biological grandfather was always a bit of an alcoholic, and as a result, my dad never really had a father figure until Bob came along. So it was left to him to teach my dad about life. He taught him several of life's useful skills, like driving, fishing, shooting, and fixing things, as well as many life lessons, like how to be respectful, how to work hard, and how to be a good man. Now, Bob was a pretty stereotypical stepdad in that he was pretty strict and was always the one to put his foot down whenever somebody did something wrong. So as my dad grew up and got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, he and Bob began to butt heads pretty regularly. They would fight about all sorts of things, ranging from my dad slacking off in school to crashing his first car. One day, they were both going at it, and it all came to a head when my dad had enough and decided it was time for him to move out and go his own way. My dad began his own life, and eventually he would meet my mom. A few years later, he would have my sister and I. Really only then did my dad begin to realize that Bob wasn't trying to just be cruel and restrictive, but how all along he was shaping him to be the man he would become. To be the man who would raise a good family and pass on the lessons he'd learned. Sometime last spring, Bob got sick and was put in the hospital. But he seemed to be okay after a few days, so nobody really thought anything of it. This would repeat a few times over the summer until eventually he ended up having to go through dialysis. That whole process just kept making him weaker and weaker until he had to be put into a rehab center. My dad and I went to visit him, and I can still picture the room he was in as if it were yesterday. The stench of the dead and dying hung over the whole place, and Bob was barely more than a skeleton. He was losing hair, his yellowed skin clung to his bones, and he was hardly able to move. Seeing a man I'd always known to be so strong, be so weak, was shocking to say the least. Leaving there, I couldn't help but face the inevitable reality of what was to come. A week later, he had to be put in Emory Memorial Hospital in Atlanta, one of the best in the country. Yet, even there, none of the doctors could understand what was going on with him. There was no cancer, no detectable diseases, there wasn't anything. He got to a point where he didn't even understand what was going on, and that he just thought he was driving across the country. The doctors told us there was really nothing else they could do. We managed to get him transferred to a hospice center in Vidalia, Georgia, so he could be closer to family. There they told us that he'd have at most 2 weeks to live. On Saturday, September 24th, 2016, at 6:45 in the evening, Robert Lisbon Hicks passed away from kidney failure due to unknown cause. While he may be gone, his teachings and passions live on through my father and I, and will be passed down for generations to come. Rest in peace, Bob. We love you.